Okay, I'm Scott, and what we have here is a Powder Springs, Georgia Military Armaments Corporation M10 45. This is a submachine gun. It's a transferable machine gun. And this particular gun, the receiver was made in Powder Springs, Georgia in 1973. I bought this gun from SWD, also known as Cobra, in 1989. And I picked it up, I took delivery on December of 1989. That was a really good Christmas for me that year. But unfortunately, we're not really talking about this gun right now. We are talking about this gun right now. This is a Jersey Arms Works Commando Avenger submachine gun. It's in 45 ACP as well. And I'm starting this talk because I want to go through some of the history of this unique and rare copy of the M10 45 machine gun. Now, the history of this gun starts around 1980 with a guy by the name of Dominic Spadilla. He owned a machine shop that was called Hatton Industries in New Jersey, and Hatton Industries had a license to manufacture firearms. Well, he wanted to make a open bolt semi-automatic pistol version of the M10 45 submachine gun. But the problem was he couldn't call it an SM-1045 or anything like that, because at the time RPB Incorporated, they had the rights to manufacture the M10 and M11 machine guns and semi-auto pistols. So he ended up calling this thing the Commando Avenger. Now, they started manufacturing these pistols in 1982, and the ATF got wind of them doing this, and so the ATF came to their factory and asked to see a sample of one of the pistols they were making. Well, when the ATF saw one of the pistols, they told the Spadilla that these pistols would be classified as machine guns because they're too easy to convert to a machine gun. And they're the ATF, they make the rules. Well, Spadilla said, well, we've already made over 500 of these pistols already. Well, so the ATF said, well, tough luck, you know. And so then Spadilla said, well, can't you give us the same deal that you gave RPB and let us sell the 500 and some odd pistols that we already built? Well, ATF says no, because we originally approved RPB to manufacture those semi-auto pistols. Then when we changed our mind, we allowed them, out of the goodness of our hearts, to sell the pistols that they had already manufactured because we had approved them. But you guys never gave us a gun to look at, so we never approved this gun in the first place. So you're out of luck. You're going to have to register any of these guns you already completed as machine guns. Well, Spadilla, he took the government to court, and when he took the government to court, he took them under the name of Jersey Arms Works. Now, Spadilla, he owned the company that made the gun, Hatton Industries, in Indian Mills, New Jersey. But he also made another company that he called Jersey Arms Works, which is known as JAWS now. And Jersey Arms Works was just the company that would advertise and sell these guns. So when you hear Jersey Arms Works and Hatton Industries, they're the same thing. They're owned by the same guy, Dominic Spadilla. So Spadilla took the ATF to court. He lost. It turned out that there was a total of 520 semi-automatic pistols that they had actually completed, and they ended up registering as machine guns. Now, they ended up selling about 143 of these guns, probably to Class 3 dealers. And the other 377 completed pistols, they went into storage. And Jersey Arms Works, Hatton Industries, they went bust. They went bankrupt. About 5 years later, another company called SWD, also known as Cobra, they ended up buying all of the remaining supplies. They ended up buying the other 377 leftover pistols. Now, SWD knew at the time that a semi-automatic pistol that was registered as a machine gun wouldn't sell. So what they did is they took those original pistols and they rebuilt them into very close copies of the M1045s, the original Macs, the original Mac M1045s. And so they ended up selling these rebuilt guns starting around 1989. I remember seeing an advertisement for one of their Jersey Arms M1045s in 1990 in a flyer, and they wanted $450 a piece for them then. Now, I mentioned that I had bought an original Powder Springs MAC1045 from them in 1989, and I paid $500 for that. So they were asking a little bit more for the original Mac guns than they were for the Jersey Arms guns. Now, where this gun comes in is around 1990, I saw an advertisement in the Machine Gun News magazine from a Class 3 dealer by the name of John Norrell. He was a big Class 3 dealer at the time. And he was advertising stripped Jersey Arms machine gun receivers. So I called this guy up and talked to him, had a good talk with him. Remember, this is 1990, there's no internet to speak of back then, so you had to use your regular phone. And he explained to me about these particular guns and what I would have to do to get this strip receiver built up as an M1045 like this gun is. I eventually bought two of those strip receivers from Norrell for $255 a piece. Don't get upset with me or mad at me because I paid $255, okay? Also, don't give me any shit over this cheap red dot sight I have on this gun, all right? Okay. So I ended up getting these two receivers, and I ended up building this particular gun up in 1990. I built it up with a parts kit that I got from SWD Cobra. The other gun is, the other receiver is still in my safe as an investment. It's a pretty good investment because the last one of these stripped Jersey Arms receivers I've seen for sale sold about a year ago for $6,000. So I'm pretty happy with my purchases here. Okay. So I wanted to go over quick some of the differences in this gun over the other gun. I mean the original Mac guns. Oops, I got it on safe here. Let me take this thing apart. Get that out of the way. There's your Jaws receiver. And here is your Powder Springs receiver, your Mac receiver. First thing you'll notice is that the Mac receiver is parkerized and the Jersey Arms receiver is blued. That's because all of the Jersey Arms pistols were blued instead of being parkerized. Now, if you look at the back strap here, you will see the Jaws receiver. It has a notch rear sight, and the Mac receiver has a peep rear sight. Now, remember, SWD rebuilt 377 of these guns, and to the 377 of the Jersey Arms guns that they rebuilt, what they did is they removed this back plate and they replaced it with this kind of back plate. So all of the Jersey Arms guns that SWD updated, it has the regular peep sight back plate. That back plate that that SWD put on the Jersey Arms guns also has the cutouts in the back here, so you can put a stock in there. Remember that the original Jersey Arms guns were pistols, so they had no provisions for a stock. On my gun, I had to take a gunsmithing file and file open the notches so I can put the stock adapter in here. Now, if you look at the MAC receiver, you'll see there's a button on the bottom. This is your stock latch mechanism here, and it's welded into the bottom of this receiver here. On this particular, on the Jaws gun, all they had was the 3 holes so you can install the hardware. They never installed the stock latch hardware on the Jaws guns because they were pistols. What I ended up doing is to install this particular stock adapter, I just bolted it on. And if you look inside here, you can see that it's just bolted on with a nut and a bolt and a little block here to hold it together. You notice there's an extra bolt on the top here, and what that does is it snugs up against the rear of the upper to keep the upper from flopping when I'm shooting the gun. It just makes it more solid. Now, if you look at the original MAC gun, you'll see the hardware that's already installed in the back of the gun. And I'm trusting that my wife on the camera is getting good shots of this, okay? Now, as you go further on into this gun, I'm going to lose these. We're going to look at the feed ramp here. On this particular receiver, when I tried to install your standard MAC10 45 upper and bolt assembly, the bolt assembly would hit the top of this feed ramp here. I ended up having to take some sandpaper and sand it down so that the bolt assembly would clear this feed ramp. And of course, SWD had to do that as well. I also have to mention that when SWD rebuilt those 377 guns, they also installed and welded in the stock latch hardware, the same as in the MAC guns. So that's another difference here, is the feed ramp. Now, I have to say that this gun still feeds just as good as the original Powder Springs gun. Now, if you look at the feed ramp on the Powder Springs gun, you can see the difference here. You see this here? That's the feed ramp on the Powder Springs gun. You see how much shorter it is, how different it is, okay? Now, if you look further on down on this gun, both of these receivers have the same parts in them because I installed a M10 45 parts kit, so they all have the same kind of parts. Now, if you look further on in this receiver, you'll see this cutout at the end of the receiver here. And you'll look at the Jaws, there is no cutout in the end of the receiver. The reason why that is that in the original MAC guns, they had a one-piece receiver pin that they used to hold the upper and lower receivers together. And that single-piece pin had a groove in it, and the uppers actually had a little lever that was a spring-loaded lever that would fit inside that groove and lock the pin so the pin wouldn't come loose when you were shooting the gun. So to remove that pin, if you wanted to take the upper apart, you had to reach underneath this cutout here and push on the lever and then tap out the receiver pin. Now, even though I bought this gun in 1989 from SWD, and it was advertised as an original MAC10 45, at that time, the only real part of this gun that was, and still is, the only real part of this gun that's from Powder Springs, Georgia, is the receiver. SWD built this gun up from a bare registered MAC10 45 receiver. This receiver was made in 1973 in Powder Springs, Georgia, or maybe Marietta, Georgia. I'm not sure. And what happened is, when Military Armaments Corporation went out of business, it got sold at bankruptcy. It ended up as a strip receiver, and SWD ended up building it up again using their parts. Okay, but we're just checking. We're just comparing receivers now. Anyway, now if you also look at this gun in the front, you'll notice that on the receiver pinholes, you'll see little tabs that have been welded on by these receiver pinholes. Can you see that? Now these are reinforcement tabs that SWD installed on these guns when this receiver was originally made in 1973, it didn't have these reinforcement tabs, and that is to strengthen the receiver pinholes so they won't elongate or egg out when you're shooting the gun. This particular receiver doesn't have those, but I have to mention that SWD did install these when they upgraded those 377 Jersey Arms guns that they did. Okay. Another difference here is when you look at the selector lever here, or the selector pin here, you'll see full and semi stamped on the receiver. And that's to tell you when you're set for full auto and semi-auto. On my Jersey Arms gun, you'll notice there's no markings on the receiver for semi or full. That is because remember, this was a semi-auto pistol, and it originally had a straight pin that went through here, and it was fixed for semi-auto only. What I had to do to install this regular standard M1045 selector pin is I had to drill out this one hole on the side, because the hole on this side of this selector pin is bigger than the other side. Now, of course, SWD, they stamped full and semi, or semi and full on this gun, on the receivers they did. And they also drilled out this hole and put it in. And after SWD had done all of that work on these receivers, these Jersey Arms receivers, they Parkerized them. They put them all together. The only real difference between the SWD reworked Jersey Arms guns is they put a little different buttstock on the back, because they were already using that buttstock on a shotgun they were making. And that was actually a nicer buttstock than this piece of crap that came with the original MAC guns. So now you've seen the differences between these guns, so you know something about the unique history of these guns, especially of the Jersey Arms Works Jaws version of this. Now, would I recommend you buying one of these Jersey Arms Works guns? Yes, if you buy one of these that had been reworked by SWD, it is almost identical to the original MAC10 45 guns. I wouldn't really recommend you buying a strip receiver like I did, unless you like to tinker with them like I do. But I have to say that there's a special place in my heart for this gun, because I put it together with my own hands and got it to run. I had to go through a lot of work to get all these parts to work. You can't just drop these parts in this receiver just like you can in an AR-15. And I like to mention that both of these guns, the original MAC and this Jaws gun, they're dead reliable. I've shot thousands of rounds through both of these guns in one day without one malfunction. They're great guns, and I would recommend them to anyone. Now, I wouldn't pay any extra for a Jersey Arms Works gun over a MAC gun. I don't think I would pay. I wouldn't pay any extra for, or not much extra for, an original MAC gun. Maybe $100 or $200 or so, but I wouldn't. Somewhere out there may be a few of the original pistols that are still all put together and set up for semi-automatic. There may be some of the original pistols that Jersey Arms Works made, but there can't be that many of them. Is it worth someone to go and buy one of those pistols just to invest in it? I don't know. I don't really think so. I think the money is in the fact that it's a registered transferable machine gun. So that's about the end of my talk here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and cut.